Hi, everybody. We're back with Hoot. We just learned that the girl with the red glasses is Beatrice Leap, and she's got a reputation that sounds a little bit like Dana Matheson. So, as Garrett moaned, you got a death wish. So, maybe you ought to think about Catholic school, Garrett said. Roy gave a hollow laugh. Too bad we're Methodists. Ooh, then convert, dude, Garrett said seriously. Officer Delinko looked forward to getting up early to scout the construction site. It was a welcome break from his daily routine, which offered few opportunities for real surveillance. Usually that was left to the detectives. Although Officer Delinko liked the town of Coconut Cove, he had become bored with his job, which mostly involved traffic enforcement. He had joined the police force because he wanted to solve crimes and arrest criminals. Yet, except for the occasional drunk driver, Officer Delinko rarely got to lock up anybody. The handcuffs clipped to his belt were shiny and unscratched as the day he joined the force almost 2 years earlier. Vandalism and trespassing weren't big-time crimes, but Officer Delinko was intrigued by the continuing pattern of mischief at the future site of Mother Paula's All-American Pancake House. He had a hunch the culprit or culprits intended something more serious than juvenile pranks. Since the police chief was getting pressure to stop the incidents, Officer Delinko knew that catching the vandals would be a feather in his cap and possibly the first step towards a promotion. His long-term career goal was to become a detective, and the Mother Paula case was a chance to show he had the right stuff. On the first Monday after the alligator episode, Officer Delinko set his alarm clock for 5 a.m. He rolled out of bed, took a quick shower, toasted himself a bagel, and headed out for the construction site. It was still dark when he arrived. 3 times he circled the block and saw nothing unusual. Except for a garbage truck, the streets were empty. The police radio was quiet as well. Not much happening in Coconut Cove before dawn. Or after dawn, for that matter, Officer Delinko mused. He parked his squad car next to Leroy Brannett's work trailer and waited for the sun to rise. It promised to be a pretty morning. The sky looked clear with a rim of pink in the east. Officer Delinko wished he brought a thermos of coffee because he wasn't accustomed to getting up so early. Once he caught himself sagging behind the steering wheel, so he slapped briskly at his cheeks in order to stay awake. Peering through the fuzzy early morning gray, Officer Delinko thought he saw movement in the open field ahead of him. He flicked down the squad car's headlights, and there, on a grassy mound, marked by a fresh planted survey stake, stood a pair of burrowing owls. Curly hadn't been kidding. These were the dinkiest owls that Officer Delinko had ever seen, only 8 or 9 inches tall. They were dark brown with spotted wings, whitish throats, and piercing amber eyes. Officer Delinko wasn't a bird watcher, but he was intrigued by the toy-sized owl. For several moments they stared at the car, their big eyes blinking uncertainly. Then they took off, chattering to each other as they swooped low over the scrub. Hoping he hadn't scared the birds away from their nest, Officer Delinko turned off his headlights. He rubbed his heavy eyelids and propped his head against the inside of the car window. The glass felt cool to his skin. A mosquito buzzed around his nose, but he was too sleepy to swipe at it. Soon he nodded off, and the next thing he heard was the radio crackle of the dispatcher's voice, routinely asking for his location. Officer Delinko fumbled for the microphone and recited the address of the construction site. 10-4, the dispatcher said, signing off. Officer Delinko gradually roused himself. The squad car was hot, but oddly it looked darker outside now than when he had first arrived. So dark, in fact, that he couldn't see anything, not even the construction trailer. In a fleeting moment of dread, Officer Delinko wondered if it was already the next night. Was it possible he accidentally slept through the whole day? Just then, something smacked against his squad car. Pow! Then came another smack, and another after that, a steady, invisible pounding. Officer Delinko grabbed his gun, but it wouldn't come out of his holster. The seatbelt was in the way. As he struggled to unstrap himself, the car door flew open, and a white blast of sunlight hit him in the face. He shielded his eyes, remembering what they taught him at the academy, shouting, "Police officer! Police officer!" Yeah, you could have fooled me. It was Curly, the sullen construction foreman. What's the matter? Didn't you hear me knocking? Officer Delinko tried to gather his senses. I guess I fell asleep. Did something happen? Curly sighed. Get out and see for yourself. The patrolman emerged into glaring daylight. Oh, no, he muttered. Oh, yeah, Curly said. While Officer Delinko had been dozing, someone had sprayed all the windows of his squad car with black paint. What time is it? He asked Curly. 9:30. Officer Delinko let out an involuntary whimper. 9:30. He touched his finger to the windshield. The paint was dry. My car, he said despondently. Your car. Curly bent down and swooped up an armful of dug-up survey stakes. Who cares about your stupid car? Roy spent the morning with a knot in his stomach. Something had to be done, something decisive. He couldn't spend the rest of the school year hiding from Dana Matheson and Beatrice Leap. Dana could be dealt with later, but Beatrice the bear couldn't wait. At lunchtime, Roy spotted her across the cafeteria. She was sitting with 3 other girls from the soccer team. They looked lanky and tough, though not as formidable as Beatrice. Taking a deep breath, Roy walked over and sat at the same table. Beatrice glared in seething disbelief while her friends regarded him with amusement and kept eating. "What is your problem?" Beatrice demanded. In one hand was a barbecue pork sandwich suspended between the tray and her sneering mouth. "I think you're the one with the problem," Roy smiled, even though he was nervous. Beatrice's soccer friends were impressed. They set down their forks and waited to see what was coming next. Roy plowed ahead. "Beatrice," he began, "I've got no idea why you're mad about what happened on the bus. You're not the one who got choked, and you're not the one who got punched in the nose. So I'm going to say this once. If I did something to upset you, I'm sorry, and it wasn't on purpose." Evidently, no one had ever spoken to Beatrice so forthrightly, for she appeared to be in some state of shock. Her sandwich remained fixed in midair, the barbecue sauce trickling down her fingers. "How much do you weigh?" Roy asked, not unpleasantly. "What?" Beatrice stammered. "Well, I weigh exactly 94 pounds," Roy said, "and I'll bet you weigh at least 105. One of Beatrice's friends giggled, and Beatrice shot her a scowl. "Which means you could probably knock me around the cafeteria all day. But it wouldn't prove a darn thing," Roy said. "The next time you've got a problem, just tell me, and we'll sit down and talk about it like civilized human beings, okay?" "Civilized," Beatrice repeated, gazing at Roy over the rim of her glasses. Roy's eyes flickered to her hand, which was now dripping fat globs of barbecue sauce. Soggy chunks of bun and meat were visible between clenched fingers. She had squeezed the sandwich so ferociously that it had disintegrated. One of the soccer girls leaned in close to Roy. "Listen, Mouth, you best get out of here while you can. This is so not cool." Roy stood up calmly. "Beatrice, are we straight on this? If anything's bothering you, now's the time to tell me." Beatrice the bear dropped the remains of her sandwich on the plate and wiped her hand with a wad of paper napkins. She didn't say a word. "Whatever." Roy made a point of smiling again. "I'm glad we had this chance to get to know each other a little better." And then he walked to the other side of the cafeteria and sat down alone to eat his lunch. Garrett snuck into his mother's office and copied the address off the master enrollment sheet. It had cost Roy $1. Roy handed the piece of paper to his mother as they were riding home in the car. "I need to stop here," he told her. Mrs. Eberhardt glanced at the paper and said, "All right, Roy, it's on our way." She assumed the address belonged to one of Roy's friends and that he was picking up a textbook or a homework assignment. As they pulled into the driveway, Roy said, "This'll only take a minute. I'll be right back." Dana Matheson's mother answered the door, and we will stop there.